And we are live with Sunday School Carnivore. And I want to welcome everyone who came. And if you have any friends who haven't come before, right now, send them an email or a text message and give them the link to our Sunday School Carnivore. We have a special guest today, very unique carnivore. Her name is Angela Lerro, and I'm really anxious to hear her story. We also have our regulars. We have Stephanie Taylor and George Goodenough. So we're going to go around and do a very brief introduction of who we are, where we're from, and just a very brief, just an introduction, because we're going to get to the stories later so that our audience knows who we are. We'll start with Stephanie. I like to go clockwise, so we'll start at the top left there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a stage 4 ovarian cancer thriver. And I love the carnivore diet. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and I'll be in the comments answering your questions and queries, and just having a chat with you guys. Over to you, George.
George Goodenough, your 60-year-old carnivore friend from Bridgewater in Somerset, England. My story is one of type 2 diabetes and morbid obesity, both of which have long since gone. Been eating this way, more or less. Went through the keto phase, 3.5 years, and everything is now resolved. So here I am.
All right, Angela.
Hi.
Oh, should be me, but you go. I'll go last.
Okay, I'll do a brief introduction and then I'll do my story later. My name is Angela, and I am on I guess you could say, I've been carnivore for almost 5 years now, and I've been thriving on this way of eating as it has helped me with a plethora of mysterious health issues, breast cancer, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, co-infections, Babesia, Bartonella, and also all of the autoimmune conditions that come with it, mast cell activation syndrome, histamine intolerance, and hormone disruptions. But I will go into my story later.
Well, and you have a lot to share. I have a lot of questions for you, and I hope our audience will have a lot of questions as well. Anyone listening would like to ask Angela or Stephanie or George or myself a question, type a QQQ in the comments and type your question, and Stephanie will highlight it. It will pop up on the screen, and we'll do our best to address the question. Give you our thoughts on it. I'm John, the carnivore teacher. I live in Miami. No, I don't. I'm looking at Rick's name over there. My friend Rick lives in Miami. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. Been here since 2001. Before that, I lived in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and haven't been to England yet. I've got to get my butt over there. George is going to give me a tour, I've heard. He's really good at that. So I was 35 pounds overweight. I lost that extra weight. I had lower back issues. I had emotional depression. I had atrial fibrillation. I had a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder with biting my nails. I couldn't stop. Little things, big things. Just overall, when I went low carb and eventually carnivore, it was like a miracle. I'm like Superman now. I'm 60 also, and I feel 30. I feel 28 years old because fueling my body properly has healed all the things I just mentioned, and I just feel fantastic. So I can't rave about eating properly enough. And everyone we interview has a different story. And Angela, I'm really anxious to hear your story. I just read a little bit about you, that you're medium and also histamine intolerances, and you just listed a whole bunch of autoimmune and other issues. So the fact that carnivore has helped with all of these, the public needs to hear this. So why don't we go ahead and let you share your story right now?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you all for inviting me on your show today. It feels, every time I get to meet fellow carnivores and like-minded people who are just on this incredible journey of health and healing, it's so beautiful. And I think that the one thing that when you meet people on this journey is we all have such a unique story. And I think that's what the beauty of this diet is it just really connects us with people around the world who have found healing with such a unique way of eating that really isn't that unique. It's really just it's like the proper human diet. It's the way that we should all be eating, but it's like we're all coming home to one another with this diet. So I'm so grateful that I get to add more people into my community of beautiful, like-minded souls. So thank you. But yes, my journey to wellness, I guess you could call it, has been quite a struggle. I suffered the majority of my life with mysterious chronic health issues. And nobody could ever really figure out what was wrong. And back in the 90s, Western medicine was really the only tools that we had. And so my parents would take me to the doctor and we'd get another diagnosis and another prescription. And diet was never really something that we looked at, but the one thing that I always suffered with was chronic allergies. I had a few food allergies, but I always was allergic to seafood, so we never really looked at that. But I had a ton of other seasonal allergies, animal allergies. Like I always felt like I had a bubble that I had to live in, just because I had so many things that were wrong with me. And eventually, as I got older, those mysterious health issues just kept getting more mysterious. And there were moments that I couldn't even go to school, so I'd miss sometimes 20-30 days of school because I wasn't feeling well. I was always struggling with fatigue. I had hormonal issues. I had chronic strep throat, Epstein-Barr virus. It was just but the funny thing is I could sit here and tell you this, but if you saw me in school, I never looked sick. And I think that was something that my body just adapted to, was always being chronically ill, that it was my lifestyle. And so I just always knew how to carry it. Even if I wasn't feeling well, I always looked like I was the healthiest kid in the room. But then fast forward to 2013, I was 28 and I'm 40 now. But I got really sick with breast cancer. And so at that time, at the same time that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was also diagnosed with this rare autoimmune disorder in my esophagus called eosinophilic esophagitis. Now, it was one of those things where, once again, it took them 1.5 years to diagnose all of that, because every time I go to the doctor, to Western medicine, nobody could actually find anything that's wrong despite my symptoms. And so they would just send me off with oh, maybe it's this, or maybe it's anxiety, or it's it's this, but we never really were able to find the root cause. And I never really started investigating root cause healing until I got breast cancer, and none of my doctors could really understand why at 28 years old, and I don't have the BRCA gene, breast cancer does not run in my family. I'm, super young. How did I get breast cancer? So that's when I started to really get into this. There's got to be more to all of these diseases that I've been plagued with, and not finding answers. And And then, I realized that the breast cancer wasn't actually the root cause, but to me, cancer is a symptom. And that's what I learned on this journey, was that cancer is more of a symptom of something else that's going on in the body that has not yet been detected or diagnosed. And so that's when I started also, because I didn't have chemo, but I had to have a mastectomy. And when I had the mastectomy and they gave me implants, I started to have a lot of histamine issues, which at the time I didn't know what histamine issues were. But I started going into these anaphylactic like reactions. And yet I would and then I started going to the allergist. And then I started learning that I had all of these food allergies. So I started learning that I was allergic to gluten and soy and dairy. And then it was like every 3 months, I was having more and more reactions. And then I would go get more testing and I find out I had more allergies. But then I started reacting to foods that I wasn't even testing positive for. So, so that in combination of learning I had this autoimmune disease in my esophagus that was contributing to some of the allergies, the breast cancer, and then learning that of something, like learning about histamine intolerance, I was like, okay, there's something that's got to give here. And my cancer doctors kept telling me that I needed to eat more plants and I needed to, stop eating so much meat, and I needed to eat, more vegetables. And I was like, well, I guess if I'm allergic to so much, then I need to, I will start looking into pesticide-free produce and start, eating more organic and like, I'll start juicing more and I'll start, making more smoothies. And because at the same time with all of these ailments, I started doing more smoothies and juices because my digestive system at this point was so shot from all the stress and the cancer that I started doing that. And I started like breaking out into hives, and I started to notice that I was always having these weird anxiety bouts and palpitations, and I was bloated and chronic constipation, and like I couldn't understand it. So that's when I got into spirituality and I started learning about energy work and Reiki. So I always have been intuitive. That's like a separate story, but I've always been intuitive since I was a little girl. And I've always had these spiritual gifts that I was always afraid of. And so when I learned that we offered Reiki at my cancer center at Cedars-Sinai, then I was very intrigued by it. So I started learning about it and I started working with a healer there. And long story short, working with her helped me at least reestablish and regulate my nervous system. And I started to incorporate a little meat, not a lot, but a little more meat into my diet. And I noticed that I was having some changes, but I was more so attributing that to like learning the energy work, and also started to realize that I wanted to do this work to help others. And I started to understand that it wasn't just the energy work that was healing, but nutrition played much more of an impact, and food, and learning about how food is really medicinal and how it can really make or break our health. So I started adding more meat slowly into my diet, but it was really difficult because, as we all know, when you look at the spiritual community, it's very vegan focused. It's very like plant-based. I mean, you go to like a retreat in Costa Rica, it's all vegan. And you go to these, spiritual healers, and they're all pushing the vegan trend. So it's like you're kind of caught as like as a healer to be in I felt like I was in two worlds. I was trying to navigate what was best for me intuitively, but also be true to this community. So fast forward 4 years, and I have to get a surgery, and I had something called thoracic outlet syndrome. Now, at the time, I had started a new relationship, and I moved into this home where I didn't know that it was water damaged. And my Reiki room was actually the room that had the most mold in it. And I started noticing a lot of my symptoms were starting to creep back, but I just attributed to the fact that I had this rib that was compressing, this cervical rib that was compressing on my brachial plexus nerve and my subclavian artery. So I knew that I had to remove that. And that surgery unlocked Pandora's box. And that's when my whole life completely turned upside down. They punctured my lung. And when you're living in mold and you don't realize what the impact is that's already having on your immune system, I didn't realize that I was basically just one surgery away or one shot at lowering my immune system to completely put my body off the rails. I mean, that's when during the surgery, they nicked my lung. So I had a pneumothorax, and I was in the step down ICU clinic for 10 days while they drained my lung. It was one of the scariest times of my life. Then once I got home, I wasn't able to walk or stand up longer than 15 minutes without fainting. And because of that, they took away my driver's license. I had to have an assistant help me do everything. My boyfriend and I had a German Shepherd, Husky. And at the time when we were together, he was always busy. So when I didn't have our assistant helping me, I had him helping me. So I trained him to teach me how to walk again. He learned to notice when I was about to faint, so he would bark at me to sit down. My blood pressure was chronically low. And then I started to develop all of those histamine issues that I thought I was somewhat in remission for, all came back with a vengeance. And I started going into anaphylactic reactions on a weekly basis, which then turned into an every other daily basis. It was the scariest time of my life because between the fainting episodes, the allergic reactions, and barely being able to walk, I felt like I was about to die. And going back and forth to the neurologist, and every time I would go, we would do a test, and then I would get diagnosed with another neurological issue. And then I would go to the cardiologist, and I'd fail the tilt table test. And, once they put you under that umbrella of having an autonomic disorder, then anything that you suffer, and I noticed this with Western medicine, is that once you get a diagnosis of something like a autonomic disorder or a syndrome, right, then anything that you experience gets pushed under that umbrella. Like, oh, well, you're dealing with that because of this. You're dealing with that, it's because of the autonomic disorder. It's because of the autonomic disorder. And you're just going to have to learn how to manage this for the rest of your life. And I just remember looking at my neurologist and saying, well, I don't think you realize that the rest of my life is probably going to be within about 3 or 4 months, because I don't think my body is strong enough to live through this. I mean, like every anaphylactic reaction was just getting worse. So I was losing hope. And at the same time, I was losing weight. So I was down to like 89 pounds. And at that point, I stopped getting on the scale. So they wanted to put me on TPN and a feeding tube. And at the time, I didn't, they kept telling me, they kept trying to guide me with nutrition. And I said, you don't understand. It's not that I don't want to eat. It's just that everything that I'm eating at this point is putting me into an allergic reactive state. So my boyfriend and I, we ended up breaking up. He couldn't handle the illness. And so we ended up parting ways, and I temporarily left Los Angeles and I went back to Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from the Northeast, and to help my mom, because my mom was having a knee replacement surgery. And I was like, well, even though I'm really sick, maybe while I'm helping her, I can help myself find answers there, since clearly nobody in California, I've been going to the doctors at this point. So to give you some context, this was from April 2019 until February 2021 that I was going through all of this between the surgery and getting to Pennsylvania. So it was, almost 2 years of just getting sicker and sicker. And that's why I was on my deathbed, because nobody could help me. And once I got home, it was like within 3 weeks, I was having a reaction, another reaction, and just happened. My old neighbor happened to call my mom to check on me just to see how I was doing. And I was in the middle of an anaphylactic reaction. And he said, has she ever been checked for Lyme disease? And of course, I'm sitting there, like my mom's asking me if I've ever been checked for Lyme disease while I'm stabbing myself with an EpiPen. And my brain at that point was like, are you kidding me right now? I've lived in California for 18 years, but I'm also stabbing myself with an EpiPen. This is not the time to be asking me about Lyme disease. But after arguing, but learning about Lyme being an opportunistic infection, and when your body goes under a lot of stress, especially surgeries, that opportunistic infection, and especially if you're living in mold, it's like creates the perfect storm to activate. So I ended up lying to my primary doctor in California so that he would send and tell him that I was hiking and pulled a tick off of me, even though I that wasn't the case, but I just wanted a reason for him to run this Lyme test. And so I lied, and he put the test in, and I went and got tested, and I, sure enough, tested positive for Lyme. And then I went and found a Lyme literate doctor in Pennsylvania, and he ran some tests for co-infections and mold toxicity. And I came back positive with Babesia, Bartonella, and then positive for mold. And then I was tested for a genetic disposition called CIRS, which is it's short for chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which basically is a genetic disposition that disables your body from being able to detox efficiently. So people that have these chronic infections that they don't know about, the reason why they get sick is because their body cannot rid the infection efficiently. So once I actually sat with a doctor that understood my conditions, we went through my whole health history, and I learned that I've had all of these conditions, the Lyme and the Babesia and Bartonella, since I was a child, like probably since I was 5, or who knows, but it could have been since I was born. But at that same time, as I was losing my ability to eat anything, the only thing that I noticed was that I was still reacting to meat, but I wasn't reacting as severely as when I was eating plants. So then I looked into low histamine meat, and I went and I called over 500 farms in the US to see if I could find a farm that sold non-aged meat. And at the same time, I didn't know what a carnivore diet was. I didn't know that there was a carnivore community. I didn't even know about the carnivore doctors or anything. So I'm over here Googling, can I survive off of only eating meat? I was shocked when I found all the information that I found, but that's how I found Michaela Peterson. I found Dr. Paul Saladino, and I read his book because this was back when he was still carnivore. So I read the Carnivore Code. Then I found Sean Baker and read his carnivore diet book. And then I learned of Michaela Peterson, and we actually have the same genetic disposition. She also has SIRS. So it was like, wow, this is a thing. And so I then eventually did find a farm after calling almost 500 farms. I found a farm in the Illinois, the Chicagoland area called Billy Doe Meats. And they became not only my meat producer, but I called them my pharmacist, because to me, their meat was my medicine. And it still is to this day, because I truly feel the best when I eat low histamine and non-aged meat. But between the combination of just truly listening to my intuition and looking at my health as a whole, because like I said, Western medicine did not help me at all. And when I did tell my neurologist that I had Lyme disease, and I said, why didn't you ever test me for that? And they said, because it doesn't exist in California, which is a whole other conversation, because that is not true. But a lot of people think that it only exists in the Northeast and that it doesn't exist anywhere else, and that it can't be further from the truth. And hello, people do leave California. So why wouldn't you think to at least test for that? And they never did. So that was a big wake-up call. But even so, my Lyme literate doctor said to me when he met me, he goes, you are so sick, and there's nothing I can really do to help you, because at this point, you're a train wreck and you're reactive to everything. So whether I give you an herbal supplement or an antibiotic, there's a chance that could kill you. So you're going to have to figure out a way to get healthy. And then we can talk about treatment. And it was just like, I felt like I was back, when I had cancer. It was a very similar situation where I had to put my health in my own hands and figure it out myself. And so that's when I just started using all the tools I had in my toolbox. But carnivore ended up at that moment was my saving grace, because it's what got me strong enough to actually eventually start treatments. But it took me a year and a half of just being on the carnivore diet, getting my strength back, gaining my weight back. Also getting me strong enough to be able to detox and to get my body, my lymphatic system kind of on board again, and getting the fainting spells under control, and just getting my nervous system regulated, my digestive system regulated. And then I braided that in with my own spiritual practices, doing my own energy work, grounding, and other just holistic healing modalities, detoxing. And so that's where, why I've become such an advocate for this diet, but also, braiding in that we've got to address everything, not just the physical, but we also have to address the spiritual, the emotional as well.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was a bucket full of
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think I've heard so much in one sitting. You have been through literal hell.
yeah,
From childhood. How sad. And I was reading the comments that you could have avoided all of this if someone had given you the proper advice. A question came up as I was waiting for you to get to it. And when you went to the low histamine meats, was that a big turnover? Like you went completely onto carnivore, like 100% dive in, or did you phase in the carnivore foods and slowly phase out the processed food and the plants? How did you do that? And when you did that, tell me how your body started responding and reacting. Did you wake up and say, oh my gosh, this is gone, and oh, I feel better here, and wow, it's working? I mean, how was that process for you when you switched?
yeah. So by the time I found carnivore, I only had like 6 safe foods. I could eat like oatmeal and pears, and I could eat white rice. And then the only vegetables I could really eat were string beans and Brussels sprouts. And so at the time too, I was able to eat chicken, but like without the skin. So I was basically just eating that by the time and cabbage. I could have cabbage. So that was all I was eating. And if like those are terrible. Like, those foods, they're all they're carcinogenic. They've got no major nutritional value. They basically were just fillers. And so as was eating, so once I found the low histamine meat, once again, I think it was a little bit of an attachment, and I was having a hard time like completely giving up the rice and the pear, like some of the fruit. But I knew that I had to do that. But I slowly, it took me over about 3 to 4 months. So I would do, one carnivore meal a week, and then like the next week I did 2 carnivore meals, and then I went to 2 carnivore days, and then 3 so it was like a gradual thing. But the thing was when I started ordering from Billy Doe Meats, I mainly was introducing the lamb. I was eating lamb, goat, and veal. And so I actually started transitioning out the chicken. And I felt like that was actually what was really starting to help me heal, was the red meat, because I wasn't eating chicken anymore. And I had stopped eating pork a long time ago, because pork, I had known that was pretty inflammatory, and I wasn't able to find a clean source. So pork was one of the first animals that I stopped eating. And then eggs, I haven't actually eaten an egg since 2017. And I just started having my own aversions to eggs a long time ago. They weren't really settling well, so that wasn't even an option. But pork was my favorite thing. And I mean, I would go to restaurants just to find pork, because I loved pork and bacon, like my things. But that's when I really started understanding histamine, because pork is actually very high in histamine. So, but when I started doing really well on goat and lamb and veal, then I slowly started to take away the chicken and the beef. And then I started to slowly take away the grains and the cabbage and the Brussels sprouts. And basically it took about, I would say, within 3 months, just from incorporating more red meat, that's when I really started to notice the shift. And then once I started to get rid of the vegetables and the grains, then I started to notice an even bigger shift. And then it just kept going. The shift kept going. Like, I just remember feeling like Superwoman, because the thing was then I started incorporating, since I was so worried about nutrients. So, and my body being so nutrient deprived. So then I started really getting into organ meat 6 months in. So I was like, okay, let's start with lamb liver. Then I started learning more about the diamine oxidase enzyme. So the DAO enzyme is what breaks down histamine in the body. And I tried the supplement and I reacted poorly to it. And then I realized it was because it was derived from pig. So I then found like, well, these supplements are so expensive. I'm really getting into organ meat. Why don't I look into the organs that could help with that? So I started consuming lamb and goat kidney and lamb sweetbreads, which are both high in the DAO enzyme. So I started eating them. And I started to actually love organ meat. And I would only stick with the lamb and the goat and the veal organs. Beef at that point, like I was saying, was just a little too heavy, a little too hard for my body to break down. And lamb, goat, and veal being younger animals, their meat is much easier to digest and they don't produce as much histamine. And considering the place that I was getting them from, they were already unaged. Like I said, the low histamine meat made such a difference. But also, I got really into heart, like eating heart and brain. And I think brain is my number one favorite organ. I love brain. It's so good. But, it's really high in DHA. And when you are going through a chronic illness, my brain, I was always dealing with brain fog and felt like sometimes my brain would just turn off. So like I eat brain now probably 2 to 3 times a week just because it's so good. So once I really started to do the nose to tail, and then I started getting more into suet and fat. So that became like my balanced diet of a little bit of muscle meat, a little bit of organ meat, and some fat. It's a perfect meal. And now I eat more muscle fat trimmings, but when I was sick, I was really eating a lot of suet because suet's really high in stearic acid. And so when you would eat like some raw suet, it would make me feel like Superwoman. And I was noticing how much more efficiently my body was running off of eating these nutrient-dense, nourishing foods. And I wasn't having, the brain fog, the digestive issues, the energy slumps that I would get. And then I started to incorporate fasting and intermittent fasting. And then I couldn't do extended fasting because I was still trying to gain weight and my adrenals were still healing. So I incorporate extended fasting now because I'm healthy enough to do so. But the first 3 or 4 years of carnivore, I just started, that's how I started to just live. And it's been my way of life. And now I only eat ruminant meat now. So I only eat goat, lamb, beef, veal, bison, venison, and then other like elk, if I can find it, that can be sometimes challenging, but I haven't had a piece of chicken in 4 years. I haven't had pork in 5 years, and I haven't had a grain or chocolate or anything like that. Like it's just been red meat, salt, good quality salt and water, and that's it. And I have to also add that when I was really sick, one of my life dreams, one of my whole life dreams was I wanted to travel to Europe to backpack, and I wanted to go specifically to the UK. And so last year I made that happen. And it was funny because when I set that intention, because I needed a why to get well. And then I said, well, my why is I want to go backpack Europe, and I want to go to Scotland. I want to go to England, because when I was really sick and I was going through this carnivore journey, I had a lot of insomnia, like just because I was always up with my treatments and stuff, and because of the time difference. So I didn't even know that there was a US carnivore community at this point. But somehow, I don't know how I found the UK carnivore community, but I became friends with so many people in the UK, specifically in England. So I promised them when I got better, I would come visit them. And so I did that last year at this time, a year ago. I went and I started in Scotland. I toured Scotland for 6 weeks, and then I went to England, and then I went to this southern tip of Spain. I went on a carnivore retreat with Phil Escott and Ben Hunt and a bunch of other beautiful souls that were there. Anthony Chafee was there too, and met so many amazing people. And then I traveled all over Portugal and Spain, and then I went back to England, and I spent the last 5 weeks of my journey traveling all over England, connecting with different carnivores and friends that I had made online. I got to go and visit them, and it was really the journey of a lifetime. So I'm just grateful, and now I do a lot of traveling, and I speak at different events like Meat Stock and the Beef Roundup, and just kind of share my journey. And I have a holistic health practice where it's all remote. I do everything over the phone or online, and I help people with chronic illnesses, autoimmune conditions, and just to help them with optimal wellness. And I use a carnivore diet as my foundation for healing and then we go into helping them reconnect to their own inner power, connect their mind, body, and soul, so I can teach them how to heal themselves, because I truly believe that healing comes from an internal place, not an external place, and that we have the answers. We just have to have the wisdom and the intuition to access that. So that's what I do with my clients, is I help them access their own innate wisdom.
I love it. You are a beautiful soul, and you're finally alive now.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, I never felt better, and I feel so alive.
I can see it.
Like, I think that's really like knowing the last, like I said, I'm 40 now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm getting to relive my 20s and my 30s and my whole life. My whole life, I'm now feeling like life has finally began for me.
That's wonderful. I have a million questions, and we don't have enough time. But George, Stephanie, any questions that you would like to ask Angela, or do we have any that we want to highlight from the chat, Steph?
Well, I'll highlight a few, because we know that George is unfamiliar with the word short. So I will be brief, and then George, you can take over. But I actually saw George and his wife Lainey last night for a lovely mini meetup. So hello to Lainey, and I'm excited that you're coming back in January. We met up at a hotel which is near me.
Amazing.
And Joe is coming on the show. Joe from Joe's Sleep and Slim Down Journey, and Joe is coming on the show soon. And she's also here tonight, my curly twin. You can hardly tell us apart. So do check out Joe's channel as well. And I've got one eye on my phone. Joe will be joining us on the 16th of November. So we can't wait to see you then, Joe.
Amazing.
And Juliet is with us as well from our Primal course with Dr. Kiltz, saying something which I wonder if there's hardly anyone who hasn't experienced, because the health that we know about, the institutional health system, does not recognize the importance of diet and eating, and does not recognize what is the root cause of all chronic illness. Most of the time, they do not know what is causing your illness. And I think we see that again and again. They have to brush it off because they have got nothing to offer. But what gets my goat is when they're so strict that you mustn't try anything when they have nothing to offer you. As you said, John, you know, most doctors will not even ask about your diet. It's not even discussed. And when it is discussed, they tell you to limit the most nutritious foods, i.e. red meat and the fat that goes with it. And they tell you to pile up your plate with all the food that we don't need, and for many people are inflammatory and even toxic, i.e. vegetables, fruit, and grains. Sorry, I'm getting carried away, but I just wanted to call out these people because the comments have been absolutely on fire this evening, and it's great to see you all. I just wanted to give you a little shout out because Nancy wrote what many of us were thinking. What a story! I can't imagine what you went through. And do you know, Angela, I know that you only have given us a tiny fraction of everything that you've been through for the many, for the 3 at least decades from when you started experiencing symptoms until now, and all that you had to go through to finally heal yourself without really any support. But I was grateful at one stage that your doctor said to you, I cannot heal you. I cannot do anything for you. You will need to get better on your own before you come back to me. It's ironic.
Yeah.
But it's preferable to what many doctors do, which is make you worse with the drugs and so on.
Yes, absolutely. And that's because I think was a Lyme literate doctor and he was integrative. And so I found that, you know, he was very honest, and he, you know, he gave up his regular medical license to do this. And that was like my first time having an experience like that with an integrative doctor, because he was honest. It's like the first time I actually heard somebody be honest with me in the medical profession and not just blow smoke and make me feel like it was all in my head.
Perfect. And that's why what you do is so powerful, because you had sent us some links and I had a look at your website. And can you imagine how amazing it would be for somebody who's gone through 10, 20, 30, 40 more years of being told it's all your fault. This isn't happening. This isn't a thing. And to find you and have that hope and also that help to go through the journey. So Louise is with us, and she said, I'm hooked on this story. I could listen to you tell your story for hours.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing. And finally, from me, Juliet said, are you now considered cured from Lyme's disease?
Yes. I do have flare-ups because it is at this point chronic. And so we can never say cured, but we can say we're in remission. And it's just like anything else. I kind of have a joke that I don't get cold. Like, you know, some people get a cold. And like for me, like I'll get like a flare up, like if something is like, but that's mostly if I'm really pushing myself, or you know, if I get like exposed to if I walk into a moldy home, or if I get COVID or something like that, it sometimes can reactivate. But from this point, from like my last test, I don't have. I'm still testing negative for Lyme.
That's great to hear. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Angela, for sharing your story so beautifully. And it has been compelling to watch and so exciting to hear all the ups and downs, unfortunately, that one has to go through to be able to heal themselves in the structure that we work in today, the so-called medical, that has nothing to do with health. Anyway, I kind of went into a bit of a rant. So that's it from me. And over to you, George, because I know you've got some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. It's not so much questions, just I want to talk about the global community, which I know Angela is very, very keen on, and I was just not aware of the fact that you were over here, Angela, last year because so I missed you. However, we did manage to put that right when I returned the compliment because, as you know, I went to visit our mutual friend Tyler over in Wyoming for the beef roundup, which you speak at, but didn't happen this year, unfortunately. However, we had a fabulous time. And I just want to thank our mutual friend Laurie Tibbetts for actually putting us together on the phone for that night, and that's how I got to know you. I find it fascinating that you like very much the organ meats. A lot of people don't. I do. I'm a great fan of liver and kidneys, but I know that I came back with two products from Wyoming, which we can't get here in the UK. One of them being the Carnivore bar, which I know that you're an advocate of, and the other one being Pluck, which is a dried organ meat seasoning. I can see by your face that you probably know James and you know Pluck. Can you
I
tell us a
work
little
with
bit about
him.
it?
I work with him at the trade shows. I've gone with him this year and I worked his booth. And so I'm very, very like, I love Pluck and I stand by James and what he's doing within the community with the organ meats. Just amazing.
Absolutely. Well, as we speak, I have just the rice meat here, 3 tubs of Pluck. I'm probably about the only person who's got Pluck in this country. I've got the zesty garlic, the spicy mild, and the original. And I believe James is looking at adding lungs and brains to the mix fairly shortly. And there's going to be a slightly more spicy one. So, yeah, I just wanted to sort of talk about that. But I say my main interest really is the global community, and it's wonderful. And just to let you know, I will be back in Riverton in August of next year. Do you think you'll be there, Angela?
Oh, I'm speaking. I'm doing.
In that case, you definitely will be there.
We're the same talk that I was planning to do this year. I'm just going to do next year, and it's called Surviving Modern Medicine.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, because on the we met Laurie down at the Fremont Centre. We went and saw where you will be speaking. So what I'm trying to do here in the UK is is tell people I'm coming over next year, and I'm trying to get people from the UK to come as well. We'd love a delegation to come over to see you guys. I'm in contact with Tyler pretty much all the time as well. So yeah, we're hoping to see you there really. So yeah, just wanted to talk about Pluck and also about the importance of the global community. And I think we're both on the same page when it comes to those things. We have actually got James coming on to the show in November as well. So that's
wonderful.
A very good thing. And yeah, so anyway, thanks for the conversation we had over in Wyoming, and I'll hand you back to John for the minute, Angela.
Well, thank you so much, George. It was so nice to finally get to see your face because we only got to talk on the phone. So
it's very true.
Special. Thank you.
Me too.
I don't know if we can get this question answered with the time that we have, Angela, but if you could tell us, I'm curious, you're a holistic, intuitive health practitioner, energy healer, and medium. Can you share a little bit about how you use that to help people? But
yes.
we have to keep it a little short because we're near the end of the hour.
It's funny. That part of my journey is actually much easier to talk about.
Okay. We have about 5-6 minutes for that, if you could.
Perfect. Okay. So I've actually been a medium and intuitive since I was a little girl. That's when I started noticing that I had these gifts because my father had them. But unfortunately, my father passed away when I was 9. And when he died, it was something that kept continuing to develop. It was like kind of like having this extra sense that was developing within me, and I had no idea what to do with it. And there are moments where I just wanted to be normal, but the things that I was experiencing were the things that I couldn't explain. But my mom, being so aware of my father's gift, was very, very aware of my gift. And there were only a few people in my life that I could talk about it, but I was always like drawn to the metaphysics. And it wasn't until I'm just going to fast forward this since we don't have much time. Until I was 28, and I was going through the breast cancer, and that's when I met this healer who was helping me with Reiki. And the first thing she ever said to me was, the reason why you're sick is because you're not using your gifts. And I just looked at her and I said, well, I know what gifts you're talking about, and it's because my teacher died when I was 9, being my father. And she was like, well, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And when I started working with her and started to do Reiki with her, I felt safe enough with her to allow these gifts to come up and to start actually working with them and trusting them. And it was like, my whole life, I felt like I was carrying a loaded gun with me. That's what I kind of associated these gifts as, was like walking around with a loaded gun. And it felt like a ticking time bomb. And as I was healing with Reiki and energy work, that's when I realized that I needed to leave the job that I was at, which was in the fashion industry. And I needed to be of service to help people with this work and to use my gifts. So that's when I started. So I started my practice in 2015. And as I was working with my clients, and I was able to I started these connections, I started seeing things differently. I was seeing things that was going on in my clients. I was seeing things that were coming up, like that they needed to go get checked out or that they needed to get tested for. And I actually started working at Cedars-Sinai doing Reiki with the cancer patients. So I then started to, because my doctors were so also close with me, so they would send me patients. So I started really working in my practice on a medical standpoint, not so much in a spiritual standpoint. But then I started working with people. Then as I started to grow, I was only word of mouth at that time, and I was in Los Angeles. So I started growing in his word of mouth. So I would see different people, and then I would start seeing other things, that was coming through. And so now to this day, how I work with my clients is that I do Reiki with them. I don't even need them to be in my studio. So that's the thing. Like, I expanded. So I don't, like, if I'm in LA, people will come to my studio, but like I said, I work with people all over the world. So I use Reiki as a tool, but then, and I also, as I'm working on them, that's when I see what's causing their blockages, what's their energetic blockages. Sometimes it's not medical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's like there are people that have passed over that have messages that they want to bring into this session, and oftentimes a lot of trauma, it comes from people not having closure with their loved ones. And I really never know what I'm going to get with a client, but I do know that our nervous system runs our immune system, and trauma plays such a significant role in our healing. And mast cells and histamine and anger, suppressed anger and fear and lower vibrational energy keep us very sick. So we've got to heal, but we also have to make sure that we're giving ourselves the proper diet. So that's why I believe that we've got to do both. And so that's how I work. I focus on the diet first, and the energy and the emotions and the trauma. Then I look at your lymphatic system. We've got to open up your drainage pathways. We've got to focus on the detox. And then I do run labs. So if there are things that come up, we can run some labs and see what's going on there. And I do read them from an optimal functional level. So I really kind of just braid in this whole holistic thing, but I use my intuition, and I teach my clients also how to connect to their intuition, because my goal is, again, I'm just here to guide my clients. They're there but they're the map. I'm the compass, they're the map. I'm just here to lay the foundation, help them, guide them, but they're doing the work. So depending on whether it's a chronic illness, an autoimmune disease, or it's maybe they just are struggling with some stress, because we all know that I always think like preventative care is also the best care. If we can stop waiting until we're sick to address the inner turmoil and, clear our energy, we'd be much healthier.
Amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for all that you do and for telling us about all of these other, because it's not just diet, obviously. We have to hit everything from every angle, but diet is so key. We're going to start with you. We're going to go around because we're at the top of the hour. Tell us where we can find more about you, all about you. I posted some of those in the comments, copied from the private chat, but share it with us. Where can we find you and your work?
Sure. So you can find my website, which is just meatbasedmedium.com. If you would like to connect with me even more, you can connect with me on Instagram, which is meatbasedmedium. And then you can feel free to email me at meatbasedmedium@gmail.com. I'm also on TikTok, meatbasedmedium, and I'm also on LinkedIn, which is just Angela Lerro. Or you can also find me on Facebook. I am Angela Christine, but I also run a group on Facebook called Histamine Intolerant Carnivores. So if you are struggling with any type of mast cell issue or autoimmune condition, root cause, trouble finding your root cause or histamine intolerance, check out that group. There's a lot of free support on there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Steph?
Hello. Yes, Stephanie here. I'm at Happy Sexy Health, and you can get me there. We talk about helping people reverse type 2 diabetes in 3 weeks. And usually the people who find us have never heard about carnivore, don't know that red meat is good for you or anything like that. So it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to spread the message on YouTube. So we are at Happy Sexy Health. And we're also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the places. So we'd love to connect with you. Over to you, George.
You're muted.
Sorry, George Goodenough 823 is my channel. It's fairly small at the moment, although Steph is helping me to develop it. It will get bigger. I'm all over YouTube at the moment on account of the fact that we're on the Dr. Kilt's course and everybody is setting up channels and we're all making appearance on each other's channels. For example, I'm on with Miss Laugh-A-Lot in an hour's time after we finish here. And also quick shout out for us on Thursday night. Kerry is hosting 4 Brits on his channel at Home Said How. Myself, Steph, Carl and Lauren. I'm also very active on Facebook. I'm going to do a review of the hotel we were talking about earlier, which Steph and I had dinner at last night. You'll find that by tomorrow afternoon. So Facebook and YouTube, all over it really. Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Real quick, I'm just the Carnivore Teacher on YouTube, on Facebook, on Threads, LinkedIn, Instagram, every place you can find it. Same name, pretty much. Check it out. Check out everybody's channel. We will put the information for Angela and everybody in the show notes. I'll put that in the show notes of this YouTube within an hour when we finish here, so people can find where we are. And I want to thank you so much for coming, Angela. You've been a wonderful guest. We hope we get
thank
to.
You so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good evening, everybody. Stephanie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.